Imagine that a parent walks into a pediatric clinic carrying a healthy toddler. The doctor recommends the routine childhood vaccines. The parent refuses. They are not careless. They are not trying to hurt their child. They believe they are protecting the person they love most. Now imagine that the same child develops measles, infects a baby who is too young to be vaccinated, and exposes a classmate receiving cancer treatment. Has that parent simply exercised a right, or have they neglected a responsibility? This is one of the most explosive questions in modern medicine. Is refusing routine childhood vaccines a legitimate act of parental authority, or can it become medical neglect? The answer is not as simple as calling every hesitant parent irresponsible. It is also not as simple as saying that parents can make any medical decision they want. We need to separate fear from evidence, private choice from public risk, and ordinary disagreement from genuine danger. I am Dr. Adrian Mercer. This is an educational discussion about medical ethics and public policy, not personal medical or legal advice. Vaccine recommendations and laws differ between countries and regions, so families should discuss individual questions with a qualified clinician. A single case of measles can enter a community quietly through an airport, a school, or a crowded waiting room. Measles is not just a childhood rash. It spreads through the air and is among the most contagious infections known. A person can enter a room after an infected patient has left and still be exposed. The disease can cause pneumonia, brain inflammation, hospitalization, long-term complications, and death. The measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is not perfect because no medical intervention is perfect. According to the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, one dose is about 93% effective against measles, and 2 doses are about 97% effective. Most side effects are mild and temporary. Serious reactions can occur, but they are extremely rare. That distinction matters. A responsible medical conversation should never pretend that vaccines have zero risk. It should compare the known risks of vaccination with the much greater risks created by the diseases they prevent. Communities also need very high coverage because measles spreads so easily. Public health authorities generally aim for about 95% coverage with 2 doses. That level helps protect vaccinated people, but it also protects infants who are too young for routine vaccination and patients who cannot safely receive a live vaccine because their immune systems are severely weakened. In early 2025, a large outbreak spread through communities in Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma where vaccination coverage was low. During the first 16 weeks of that year, the CDC reported 800 measles cases in the United States. Most were connected to that outbreak. 11% of reported patients were hospitalized, and 3 deaths were reported. Nearly all cases occurred in people who were unvaccinated or whose vaccination status was unknown. Those numbers do not prove that every parent who refuses a vaccine will cause an outbreak. They do prove that refusal is not always a private act. When enough people make the same decision in the same community, the risk changes for everyone. So why do parents refuse? Behind every refusal is usually a parent who believes they are protecting their child. Some parents fear side effects. Some have lost trust in drug companies, government agencies, or the medical profession. Some have heard frightening personal stories online. Some object for religious or philosophical reasons. Others feel rushed, dismissed, or pressured during short medical appointments. There are also parents whose questions began with a genuine bad experience. A child may have developed a fever after a previous vaccine. A family member may have had a rare adverse reaction. Even when a clinician knows that the next dose is still recommended, the parent's fear can feel completely rational from inside that family's experience. Mocking that parent usually makes the problem worse. Shame can harden uncertainty into resistance. If doctors treat every question as stupidity, hesitant families may leave mainstream care entirely and turn toward people who offer certainty without evidence. The strongest argument for parental choice begins with a basic principle. Parents normally have broad authority to make decisions for their children. They choose schools, diets, religious practices, and most medical care. They know the child's history and values better than the government does. A free society should be cautious before allowing officials to override a loving parent. Medical decisions also involve bodily integrity. Vaccination is a physical intervention. Even when the evidence strongly supports it, many people believe the state should carry a very heavy burden before compelling an intervention in a child who is not currently ill. There is another practical argument. If every vaccine refusal were automatically labeled neglect, some parents would avoid doctors, conceal their decisions, or refuse all preventive care. A policy intended to protect children could destroy the relationships most likely to change a parent's mind. This is why vaccine refusal by itself is not usually treated as medical neglect in ordinary clinical practice. Neglect normally involves a failure to provide care when that failure creates a serious and sufficiently immediate risk of harm. The exact legal definition varies, but context matters. Refusing a vaccine before any outbreak exists is different from refusing protection after a child has been directly exposed to a dangerous infection. Refusing one vaccine is different from denying treatment to a child who is already critically ill. A parent who asks for more time is different from a parent who knowingly sends an infectious child into a neonatal ward. The ethical conflict becomes sharper when an unvaccinated child shares a classroom with a baby or a child receiving cancer treatment. That vulnerable child did not choose the risk. Their parents may have done everything doctors recommended, yet their safety still depends partly on the decisions of strangers. Parental freedom on one side can become involuntary exposure on the other. This is the strongest argument for school vaccine requirements. Schools bring large numbers of children into close contact. They can rapidly amplify infections. Requiring vaccination for attendance, while allowing genuine medical exemptions, does not necessarily mean physically forcing a child to be vaccinated. It means that participation in a shared environment can carry conditions designed to protect everyone using it. Critics respond that governments can abuse emergency language. They worry that temporary rules become permanent, that legitimate medical questions are ignored, and that pharmaceutical interests receive too much influence. They also point out that mandates can deepen political division and make people suspicious of every future public health recommendation. Those concerns should not be dismissed. Public health institutions earn trust through transparency, not authority alone. They should publish safety data, acknowledge uncertainty, investigate adverse events, correct mistakes, and explain why recommendations change. But distrust does not make every scientific claim equally plausible. The claim that the MMR vaccine causes autism has been studied repeatedly, and large bodies of evidence have not found such a link. The original publication that helped popularize the fear was retracted. Continuing to present that claim as an open scientific question misleads parents about where the evidence stands. The real question is not whether parents deserve respect. They do. The question is where respect for parental judgment ends when a child's welfare and other people's safety are seriously threatened. A court order and a child protection investigation are among the most powerful tools the state can use against a family. Those tools can traumatize children and parents. They should not be the first response to an ordinary refusal. Removing a child from a loving home over a routine vaccine disagreement would often cause more harm than it prevents. It is useful to compare vaccination with other parental medical decisions. Courts sometimes override parents who refuse an urgent blood transfusion, surgery, or antibiotics when a child faces a clear risk of death or permanent injury. In those cases, the danger is immediate, and the proposed treatment addresses an existing emergency. Routine vaccination is different because it prevents a future risk. The child may never encounter the infection. That uncertainty is one reason automatic neglect findings are difficult to justify. But prevention does not become unimportant simply because the danger has not arrived yet. Seatbelts, safe drinking water, and smoke alarms all address events that may never occur. Society still expects adults to use reasonable protection when the possible harm is severe. The probability of exposure also changes over time. When measles is absent from a community, the immediate risk to one unvaccinated child may be relatively low. When an outbreak reaches the child's school, the same decision carries a different level of danger. Ethical judgment should be responsive to that change rather than frozen into one absolute rule. Religious and philosophical exemptions create another difficult balance. A narrowly defined medical exemption protects children for whom vaccination is genuinely unsafe. A broad personal belief exemption respects conscience, but can create clusters of unvaccinated students. Those clusters matter because a national average can look reassuring, while one school or neighborhood falls far below the level needed to interrupt transmission. Enforcement can also be unfair. Families with money may move schools, hire lawyers, or arrange private education. Families with fewer resources may face penalties they cannot escape. If a government creates vaccine requirements, it also has a duty to make vaccination convenient, affordable, transparent, and accessible. A parent should not be punished for missing a vaccine that the health system made difficult to obtain. Doctors face a related question. Should a pediatrician dismiss a family that repeatedly refuses vaccines? Dismissal may protect other patients in a waiting room and express a clear professional standard. But it may also push the family toward a clinic that never challenges misinformation. Many pediatric experts therefore emphasize continued conversation, careful documentation, and maintaining care when it can be done safely. This approach recognizes something important about persuasion. People rarely change deeply held beliefs because they lost an argument. They change when a trusted person listens, answers the real fear, and remains present long enough for uncertainty to soften. Yet saying that state intervention should be rare is not the same as saying it should never occur. Imagine a child with no immunity who has been directly exposed during a deadly outbreak. Imagine parents refusing both vaccination and medically recommended measures to prevent the child from exposing others. Imagine an immunocompromised sibling in the same home whose life is placed at immediate risk. At some point, the danger may become specific enough and serious enough that society cannot treat the decision as purely private. The threshold should be high, evidence-based, and reviewed through fair legal procedures. But a threshold can exist. There is also a difference between punishment and protection. Excluding an unvaccinated student temporarily during an outbreak is not the same as prosecuting the parents. Requiring additional counseling is not the same as removing custody. Asking a family to delay attendance in a high-risk setting is not the same as physically forcing vaccination. The most defensible policy is a ladder of response, beginning with honest conversation and becoming more restrictive only as the danger becomes more immediate. The first step should be respectful communication. Clinicians should ask what the parent fears, provide clear comparisons of disease risk and vaccine risk, and allow questions without humiliation. The second step should be reliable documentation and follow-up. A refusal today does not have to become a permanent identity. Many hesitant parents accept vaccination later when they have time, trust, and repeated conversations. The third step can include reasonable conditions for shared spaces. Schools, childcare facilities, and hospitals may require vaccination or temporary exclusion when the risk to others is substantial. Medical exemptions must remain available for children who genuinely cannot be vaccinated. The fourth step involves targeted public health measures during an outbreak or direct exposure. These may include temporary exclusion, monitoring, testing, or other measures authorized by local law and guided by current medical advice. Only at the highest level of immediate and serious danger should authorities consider whether refusal has crossed into medical neglect. Even then, the response should be narrowly designed to protect the child and others, not to punish a family for holding unpopular beliefs. My conclusion is that routine vaccine refusal should not automatically be called medical neglect. That label is too powerful, too blunt, and too likely to destroy trust when used carelessly. But parental rights are not unlimited. Parents cannot demand the freedom to expose other people to preventable danger without consequences. Society may set evidence-based conditions for schools and healthcare settings, and it may intervene in rare cases where the risk becomes immediate, severe, and specific. The difficult truth is that both sides are protecting something valuable. Parents are protecting authority over their children's bodies. Public health officials are protecting children who cannot protect themselves. A humane policy must respect families while refusing to pretend that contagious disease is merely a personal matter. So where would you draw the line? Is refusing routine childhood vaccines a parental right, medical neglect, or something that changes depending on the level of danger? Share your view respectfully. If this discussion helped you think more clearly about the issue, subscribe for more evidence-based conversations about the medical questions society finds hardest to answer.